Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Tuesday, the 16th day of July, 2024, and we're still trying to comprehend all the events of the last few days, what went on, why it went on, etc., and fallout from that. We can report that President Trump last night appeared before the crowd at the Republican convention in Milwaukee. There were a lot of tears, and it looks like he had a real Secret Service group watching him there. You know, the A team, not these Keystone cops that were there in Butler, Pennsylvania. And so, what I'm going to do, I was putting together last night from a whole lot of different sources, sort of a montage of what had gone on Saturday there in Butler, Pennsylvania. But then today I looked in the New York Post, did an excellent job of laying it all out. So, what I'm going to do is just follow their lead and just add a few things. The story is new details from Trump assassination attempt reveal exact timeline of failures, despite gunmen sticking out like a sore thumb. And that's what's happened. The gunman did stick out like the proverbial sore thumb. He didn't get away with not being seen. He was seen all the time, and yet nobody did anything about it. And of course, there's two different theories of why this happened. One is this was purposely allowed to happen so President Trump would be taken out, would be assassinated. That's becoming very popular. You've got people saying now, I've seen some stories, it's obviously this would obviously happen. Then there's the other possibility. You've got the most grossly incompetent group of people the world's ever seen. And it's just typical of just an incompetent action there on the part of the authorities. And you can actually argue either way. And so at the end of the day, I don't know if we'll ever know which is true unless there's some type of smoking gun. We're almost 61 years from the Kennedy assassination, November 22nd, 1963. And there's still no consensus of what really happened. Were there one gunman? Was he two? Was he shot from the front? Was he shot from the back? And again, same problem is going to happen here. We're going to have people on both sides argue this from now until 10 minutes after the last judgment. And so I think what we need to do, and I'll go through this, is understand that it's a complicated issue. Try and put it all together. We know what the end result was. President Trump was shot in the ear. He wore a bandage last night over his ear. Whether it was done purposefully, whether it was grossly incompetence, bottom line is he survived, and we have to move on from here. So we're going to be doing that, but we'll go through this, and it's like I said, it's the New York Post, an article today called "New Details from Trump Assassination Attempt Reveal Exact Timeline of Failures Despite Gunmen Sticking Out Like a Sore Thumb." And it's the best I've seen of a summary of all this. And so they saved me from putting like four different groups together, four different posts here and there on different media. So let's look at it. All right, here's what it says. A clear picture is emerging of the exact timeline of the staggering failures that enabled an armed 20-year-old man with no military training to scale a building loaded with counter sniper team cops in broad daylight and come within a hair's breadth of killing former President Donald Trump. That kind of says it all, doesn't it? Thomas Matthew Crooks was spotted at least twice by cops 26 minutes before he rained bullets on the Pennsylvania rally crowd, wounding Trump and two others and killing an ex-fire chief, according to WPXI sources. The Beaver County Emergency Services Unit, which traveled to the Butler County, Pennsylvania Trump rally from the neighboring Pittsburgh suburb, noticed Cooks on the roof, took a picture of him, and reported about 5:45 p.m. That's 15 minutes before it started, WPXI reported. Incredibly, not only did Crooks manage to avoid being confronted despite sticking out like a sore thumb, he secured his rooftop perch right under the noses of a local police sniper team stationed inside the building, law enforcement sources told the Post. In other words, the building he shot from, there were people inside that, the law enforcement people, local policemen there. The sniper team that they had was actually inside the building which he shot from. The building, the AGR International Inc. factory near the Butler County Farm Fairgrounds, was being used by local police as a watch post for snipers to scan for threats as the former president spoke on stage only 130 yards away, according to the sources. Cops were inside, but not on the roof during the shooting, sources said. Crooks was able to scale the building unchallenged before firing off up to 8 shots with an AR-style assault rifle, grazing Trump in the ear, killing one Trump supporter and wounding two others. Law enforcement sources said it was not clear as of Monday night whether any of the local officers who were tasked with securing the perimeter outside the rally were able to warn Secret Service agents about the gunman. Okay, let's stop right there. Whoever's in charge of all this, remember the Secret Services, we're just in charge of the inside local cops. Now that's why they blame the local cops. This is outside the perimeter that we had. This is, these buildings here. You'd think at the very least there'd be some way immediately to contact them, but evidently there wasn't, and evidently there was no contact, as best we can tell right now, to warn the Secret Service agents about the gunman. Chilling video captured at the rally illustrates the botched security operation. This includes approximately 2 minutes of footage that could go down in history as a low point for the security services and an agency of more than a 100-year history of protecting U.S. presidents. A multi-feed video montage assembled by Milk TV. Milkbar TV is where you want to go to watch this, which has been viewed by more than 3.5 million times on Twitter, shows the attempted assassination play out in real time using clips from several vantage points. In it, more than 120 excruciating seconds pass between rallygoers first spotting Crooks on the roof and the moment he fires the rifle. Perhaps most disturbingly, the people who saw the would-be assassin repeatedly tried to alert uh, law enforcement, which was patrolling nearby. The surreal footage echoes what several witnesses told reporters after the shooting. Some rally attendees were aware of Crook's presence well before he fired. One local cop from the Butler, Pennsylvania township did manage to get hoisted on the roof, and he came face to face with a gunman who pointed his rifle at him. The Butler County Sheriff defended his failure to stop Crook, saying the cops was pulling himself up and he had to let go when faced with the weapon. In other words, he pulled himself up on the roof and there's the man with a gun. Obviously, he didn't have a gun drawn, or obviously he got up the best he could without being able to protect himself. Law enforcement sources who have served on presidential protection details told the Post that Secret Service field offices where events are taking place routinely engage, now get this, in a budgetary tug of war with purse string holders back in Washington. See, Washington holds the key to this. It's the Biden administration, who, remember the woman who's in charge of the Secret Service now, this woke person who is hiring the DEI, people trying to be politically correct. She was basically, I don't know if you heard this. I don't know if we've mentioned this. She got the job for one reason, as we understand it, because of the pushing of Jill Biden herself as the one who got her into that position. A number of stories have said that. Anyway, so let's face it, at the very least, they're not interested, tremendously interested. They didn't send the A team there to Butler, Pennsylvania about the D team or the E team, as we saw the Keystone cops as soon as Trump was shot when they were trying to protect him. They had a couple of Secret Service agents that surrounded him. There were women who were short, and if this sniper was still there, he could have killed Trump even afterwards, because they didn't surround him totally, and they botched it. And a lot of news sources from around the world basically are laughing at this. Don't these people know what they're doing? Well, anyway, um, this says the officers only got a fraction of what they asked for with respect. They usually get that with security. This means the agency has to depend on local law enforcement to supplement its resources, and small municipalities typically lack the resources of major cities like New York, and this seems to be what happened. The sources said the failure in Butler could only have been attributed to Crook's position on the roof's downward slant. The downward position on the roof, downward slant, might have placed him just out of sight of the counter sniper team position or station near Trump. James Gagliano, a law enforcement analyst who served on the FBI's elite hostage rescue team and a senior SWAT team leader, offered some insight into the footage he's seen of the dreaded 2 minutes. He said the investigation obviously just began, but when you look at the rooftop position that was accessible from the ground, 130 yards away from a former president, a current presidential candidate, and someone so polarizing, is that a place that should have been covered? I would argue yes, he said. Duh. Anyway, Gagliano said it was absolutely a miracle that Trump survived the attempt on his life, as we talked about that yesterday in our second edition of Breaking News, which is thanks in no small part to Crook's poor marksmanship. A shot of 130 yards is something in the business we'd refer to as a cake shot. In other words, no one should have missed that. It's something anybody with reasonable marksmanship skills can close their eyes, hold their breath, jerk the trigger, and make. He also said he's saving his ultimate conclusion pending the outcome of the investigation. He said, calling Saturday's debacle catastrophic, colossal systems failure that will be dissected for years to come. In the video, when the 2 minute timer begins with a split screen of Trump speaking on stage and bystander footage taken near the manufacturing plant building where Crooks was perched with his rifle. The videographer shooting the footage suddenly verbally acknowledges a nearby commotion, apparently sparked by several rally attendees noticing Crooks on the roof. Look, they're all pointing. He observes the crowd's reaction to the unusual and troubling sight. Seconds later, the camera pans and captures what appears to be a uniformed police officer making his way around to the front of the plant building where the 20-year-old gunman was hiding. At this point, more onlookers were crowding around to gawk, chatting among themselves about what they saw. Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look, he's right there. He's laying down. See him? Yes, he's laying down, a woman says in response. And just before the 17-second mark, Crooks comes into the frame for the first time, appearing to lie on his right side. By 22 seconds in, the crowd was becoming more interested, were gathering closer to take a look, and the scene grew notably more tense. 10 seconds later, the videographer points out Crooks to another male bystander, and at the 34-second mark, Crooks can be seen very clearly adjusting his position to rest on his stomach. Just at that moment, with Crooks still visible in the frame and still manipulating his position, a male voice calls out, "Officer." An anxious sounding woman starts giving play-by-play of what she's witnessing, seemingly by calling out to law enforcement, "Come over here. He's on the roof. He's flat right here. He's flat on the roof. He's standing up now. He went flat on the roof again." At this point, other members of the crowd can be heard calling out as well, but their voices are indistinguishable. Then at the 52-second mark, the montage shifts perspective to a single shot of Trump, who is still speaking on stage. The video is barely 1 minute away from the shooting. Then, at the minute 49 seconds, the camera splits into four simultaneous views, two of Trump head on, one from the front, one from the back, and another view of the original cameraman who noticed Crooks on the roof. A second later, the man in what appears to be an army uniform, complete with green helmet, steps into the frame and appears to wave at the crowd before disappearing out of frame, walking in the opposite direction of the manufacturing plant building. At 1 minute 55-second mark, a man screams, "He's got a gun!" The camera work grows increasingly unsteady, but it captures what appears to be a uniformed police officer walking toward the building where Crooks is stationed. 2 minutes and 1 second into the count-up, three distinct shots ring out, and the scene erupts into chaos. As Trump hits the deck, the Secret Service swarms him. A chorus of blood-curdling screams goes out from the crowd. Again, this is from the New York Post. Okay, so what do we make of this? Purposely allowing the shooter to carry out his mission of the most incredibly incompetent security that we could ever imagine. People are arguing either way. And let me say something. Seeing things like this over the years, working with some of the major press, being on stories that were national stories and watching what took place and what was reported, and seeing in other instances reporting on similar things, are not exactly the same. Let me tell you something. There is gross incompetency out there, and it is not impossible that um, this is what happened. That you just have one Keystone cop after the other. The gang that couldn't shoot straight is trying to guard the president. First of all, the Secret Service just takes care of the inside of the venue for budgetary reasons. In fact, they showed up supposedly only the day before. They didn't have a lot of time to scout out the area. But to leave a rooftop 130 yards away in this day and age, when an AR rifle can easily, like we said, a piece of cake, shoot and kill someone from that distance with even minimal training, is unheard of, and it is ridiculous to have the snipers that are supposedly watching for Trump inside the building, on the bottom down below, and not on a rooftop. It's literally unheard of. It's incredible, and that's why people will say, "Well, it's obviously a setup." But again, there's no way of knowing that this man Crooks was working with anybody. No one knew that he was coming to do this. As far as we know, the proverbial lone wolf. So this is where we're at right now. And again, people will probably argue forever until the Lord comes back, whether this was purposely allowed to happen or whether you've got gross incompetency. And like I said, you can argue either way. But here's the bottom line. Here's where we got to go from here. This is what happened. Donald Trump's still alive by the grace of God, like we talked about yesterday. It's one of those basically divine appointments that God had him still survive to look up just at the right time, turning his head so the bullet would not strike him and kill him immediately. So let's understand this. And I think we need to spend our time not just going over this over and over again. We do this to let you know what's going on. But again, you're going to see for years and years people arguing both sides of this unless something comes to the light about whether it was obvious allowing Trump to be killed or it was just more likely. I think right now I'm leaning towards the gross incompetency. And people say it's no, it's impossible. Well, actually, it isn't when you see the whole story going on. Anyway, for our purposes, what we do here on Breaking News every day is list stories that have some importance in last days Bible prophecy. And this one is a huge one because the United States, according to our 25 signs, sign number 11, will not be a player. We're going to go downhill. We're going to be irrelevant at the time of the end. But what an example of this, how irrelevant we seem to be, particularly with this administration. And so we're going to have another almost 4 months of this sort of stuff going on before the election, not knowing where we're going to end up. It's only something we'll determine in November. And we'll be doing stories today on, there's a whole bunch of other stories I'd like to get to, but we needed to get to this thing just to put things into perspective. All right, well, enough of that. Anyway, I'm Don Stewart. Go to our website, Educating Our World. Again, free resources, 65 books, free download, 12 books on Bible prophecy, including 25 signs. We're near the end that goes into great detail about what's going to happen, what we know for sure will happen. These are events that we are sure are going to happen because the Bible says so. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Be back with you later today with more stories. And until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.